the pen across the room. Yo, this is your boy Miguel. This is Common Conversations, and I want to welcome you to a new segment, a new series. We've got some really dope sponsors who are actually making this happen, and so we'll talk about them a little later. But this new series is Let's Talk About Sex. All the things that are taboo, the things we don't talk about, the things we want to talk about. And if you'll notice, I'm a little outnumbered here, so I have to be on my best behavior. There's some promises that was made, right? So I have 3 beautiful women here. I'm gonna start there because they said I could start however I want it, and then they're gonna chime in as we get it. So we got Dr. Ashley, we got Amira, we got Riece, and they're gonna tell you who they are as we begin this journey. So this is gonna be both a podcast as well as something that we throw out in the social media world, YouTube, etc. So you'll be able to watch as well as tune in while you're driving down the road. So don't wreck, because we may use some language that you're not accustomed to, like orgasm, right? Because we learned not everybody has orgasm. Or we might talk about pulling out. Because as you know about this conversation.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
We're not talking about that.
Well,
we talk
maybe
about
to prove
everything under the sun. But first, let's get into, as this is our first show, why we came together to do this thing. Anybody want to start? Like, just...
I feel like Amir wants to start.
Amir wants to start.
I was really praising, like, first show. But I guess I was also volunteering. What was the question again? Why we're doing this?
So now you know how this is gonna roll, right? So why
I don't even got the
this?
drink yet.
Like, why did we come together to talk about sex? What sex means to us, what it means to society. We're gonna share research. We're gonna bring in some experts who are gonna guide us through consent and a number of other things. But for us on this first show, like, why should the audience chime in, hang out with us for at least an hour as we discover who we are individually and then maybe as a group?
Because sex is empowering, and we need to talk about that more. We need to talk about how we can, I feel like, take control of our magic as human beings through sex. And it's such a taboo conversation across the globe, and even down to other like cultural aspects of it. And I think like all those need to be discussed as well. So we got to talk about sex because we got to talk about sex. Not a lot of people talking about it in the capacity that we need it to, you know, as in relatable, honest, transparent, and analysis. I don't know.
Analysis. Sex analysis?
Sex
What's
analysis.
a sex analysis?
It's just more conversation.
Oh, just
We're
more conversation.
gonna focus.
All right, we're gonna focus.
We're
Okay,
gonna
sorry.
focus. Like,
Dr.
why
Ashley,
we
what's
here?
up?
Yeah, so I think everything that Amir said, I completely and 100% wholeheartedly agree with. From my standpoint as a medical professional, I come to it from the standpoint that sex is a health and wellness issue. Like, we don't talk about it enough and I think we're gonna go into women and ability to find pleasure in sex and how important that is, and pleasure in life beyond that. And just the fact that when we don't talk about it, we don't equip ourselves and our communities with information to prepare them. So then we're not in situations where we're having to deal with STDs, mistimed and unwanted pregnancies, and all of the other things that can come with sex on the other side when we're not prepared to have it. And that's not even to start breaking down the mental health disorders that can come from sex if we are not prepared. So from my standpoint, I think it's extremely important that we have real conversations about sex and sexuality early so that our kids grow up equipped with information to make good decisions so they can enjoy this beautiful thing that we've been gifted with and not, you know, have to deal with the taboo or be scared.
Or be scared.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. Riece, what's up?
For me, I think as a pleasure researcher, talking about sex is understanding pleasure at its like most basic form. And so the more that we can understand sex and pleasure within ourselves, the more that we can understand pleasure in other areas of our lives and live more like fulfilling and truly joyful lives.
I love all of that. So
Why are you here?
why am I here?
Why you trying to skip over your part?
Well, I'm trying, you know, since I made promises to be an adult and
A 30-plus
adult and not be childish. No, honestly, because, you know, I talk about sex all the time. And
To who?
Everybody. Like, all the time to everybody. And mostly to myself. Sometimes Dr. Ashley, but she has to tell me to behave.
I have to know.
Because we're not hearing it.
Honestly, I love sex, right? I love all the ideas about sex. I understand pleasure. I love being with women and the sensuality and the intimacy that comes with that. Yeah. So in many ways, for me, it's not always about sex, right? Sex is kind of the cherry on top, right? Definitely if you can build a relationship and you can have this great intimacy with a person. And so for me, sex has always been like this third conversation in my life, right? It's where our souls meet, right? It's an out-of-body experience. And I believe 100% in pleasure.
I like that, where our souls meet. I'm gonna write that down.
That was real deep.
Man, I'm just saying, like, you know, and so I think having that conversation, and I'm always curious about what other people's experiences are and their education, right? Because we did, so for those who are watching or listening, we did the screen test. And if I could bring it up, like we had this conversation and we were talking about, I made an assumption that moms talk to daughters about sex.
A poor assumption.
Right, poor assumption. And so during this conversation, you know, y'all corrected me and was like, nah, that didn't happen for me this way, or that didn't happen for me this way. And I had to go home and it was like, because I had a 19-year-old daughter, and I was thinking, you know, I've been intentional, but Riece, you asked me, did I talk to my daughter about pleasure? And I was like, yeah, I think I did, but not in the sense of, you know, where's your clitoris, right? You know, or what is it, you know?
Like parts.
But parts. But we talked about overall arching, looking at and feeling good and understanding your body, good, bad touch, you know, and how to engage. So I had to think about that. Even though we had that conversation, I answered, I had to go home and be like, did I do this right? You know, and then I talked to my wife and then, you know, I was like, and she's like, so you want to have this conversation with her now that she's 19? And I'm thinking,
it's never too late to talk about it.
So,
Sex continues after
Forever.
that first time that you have sex. I think we were talking about talking to your kids about sex, and sometimes it is, if you even get that conversation, it's that one conversation. Like we were just saying, don't get pregnant. You have that one conversation and then no one ever revisits it. You just kind of have to learn it on your own.
Yeah, my sex talks with my mom were definitely like fear-mongering at words because I'm currently like still child-free, I guess. I don't know if that's trauma or something.
Success.
It's a success.
whatever said worked, right?
But it was always centered, it always came back to, here's how you have a baby, sex is how you have a baby, don't have a baby.
Period.
Okay, so don't have sex.
Right.
Later, condoms was introduced to me and, you know, protection, and then maybe more sex can be a little bit more pleasurable, but don't be a hoe, you know? Don't be a whore and go out here and be fast and do all this, that, and the third, which now I'm later learning, like, that's also perfectly okay.
Yeah.
So I was hearing about, you know, the intimacy part and how sex is like the third part of the conversation or whatever, and I'm just like, well, what about for the folks? Well, that's the very first thing. I'm trying to get in and out.
You know, I don't know. I've never been an in and out person. So I will tell you, my second introduction to sex, so after I lost my virginity, that was an in and out relationship, but that was fire. Right,
Okay.
I know her name, right? Like I remember her. I looked for her for a while after that, right? Because you know my first time wasn't all that hot, right? It was, you know,
I would like to meet someone whose first time was.
That part.
Mine was great, actually.
What?
You did say that.
Yeah, I feel very grateful because I don't hear that a lot, especially from women.
That's
like
dope.
that their first time was like an intimate experience.
Yeah.
It was like the in and out, like what you were saying. So, but yeah, I think that part of what made that like that was the person, and different people get socialized differently around losing their virginity, and if you have a person who's also socialized to, this should be an experience that's pleasurable for both people, and that they talk about consent and communication before, it makes a difference. I think the problem is that just what we were saying, people don't have those conversations around that. Now, my parents didn't have that conversation with me, but in my mind, I was like, this is what I want this to be like. And when I talked to that person, I was like, this is what I want this to be.
I'm just happy you even talked to them and told them what you wanted to be.
I was gonna
like.
say that autonomy right there is super dope.
Yeah.
So as women, how do you get to a place where you can have that conversation and say, this is what it should be like, right? You know,
I think that takes time
Yeah.
because you know there's this level of self-efficacy, like in you believing that you deserve to have a pleasurable experience, to even know that that's a possibility, and then. I think it's also kind of a part of a conversation about boundaries. Like your expectations for this is, I don't want it if it's not X. And I think sex can be a part, or should be a part of that.
Okay.
I agree. I think it's boundary setting, because what I saw I didn't lose my virginity until the summer before my senior year. And what I saw from my friends was them having these experiences of these people that they didn't really know that well, and they didn't have great experiences. And I hear that all the time. And so when I'm watching my friends go through this experience, I'm like, I want mine to be different than that. And what you said about the self-worth and what you deserve, we had the conversation about women get socialized to please men.
I was definitely not focused on an orgasm. Yeah, you asked me like, focusing on masturbation. I was like, girl, I ain't do none of that until grad school. Because I wasn't explained or educated on how orgasm works. You actually got to put in some work. You got to know your body.
Yeah.
I didn't know none of that shit. So being with people, I just felt I'm here for you. And I'm pleased that you please. And that's that. But after that first one,
then it changes.
It changed the whole game.
It changes.
But you don't get none of that. Like, we either have to explore and go through all those crappy experiences, or hear our friends, unfortunately, go through those experiences to really start to dig into what you want. So, like, my answer with that is, no.
Right. And so, like, imagine if we talked to our daughters early on about like what that experience could look like, because we know what it could.
They would just grab life by any body part, balls, vaginas, arms. Like, I just feel like they would have such a grip on so much, even down to the confidence within themselves and their purpose for their life and in this world.
And like the fullness of their womanhood, which is also held back.
And to have those conversations, because they know it's okay to say, I desire an experience like this, and I'm going to advocate for it.
So we're really talking about a different level of empowerment. Right? So women understood pleasure as a whole, not just sex. Like what it means to actually be themselves, know what they want, what they desire.
I won't say that women don't understand pleasure. I think women embracing pleasure as something that they are entitled to as well. Because women know how to please. We please everybody else.
That's a good point.
We just don't embrace, we're not taking the cape off for long enough to say, I want to get mine too, or I deserve to have this feeling as well, and I deserve all of that.
So my homeboy would call that
patriarchy.
Well, maybe. Yes, absolutely.
It's done like that on purpose, y'all.
My homeboy would call that teaching women to be hyper independent.
Teaching women to be hyper independent.
See, I taught my daughter to be hyper independent. So for me, like, I don't want my daughter. I want my daughter to experience everything that she wants to experience in life. I want her to put herself first. So even as a kid, I taught her to combat me, right? So and now she grew up. It challenged me a little bit because I had to remember who I trained and who I raised, right? So when we would have conversations, she'd be like, "No, Dad." Like, who you talking to?
Who the fuck are you talking to?
Back up, right? Because I taught you to think for yourself. I taught you to own your own positions. And I taught you to critically think what you want, right? So if you don't want to have a conversation with me right now, then you get to do that, right? Now, there are times because of parent, whatever, but that hopefully as she rolls out into the world, she owns that. And so whether it's financial, emotional, we did our best to give her that level. Now, that's where that hyper-independency came from. Because my guy was like, man, your daughter's so hyper-independent. I was like, I don't ever want her to rely on anybody.
I wouldn't say it's hyper-independent. I would just say it's independent. I think the adjective of hyper when it comes to saying that a woman can take care of herself is saying that society doesn't think a woman can take care of herself. So that a woman taking care of herself is hyper-independent. It really isn't hyper-independent. It's just being an independent person.
Gotcha.
Which men and women both deserve to have.
Yeah.
So we should just throw hyper-independency out.
You should throw the hyper out. You raise an independent woman who can advocate for herself, which is how men are raised in general, and we don't call it hyper-independent. We just call it independent.
We're raised to be selfish.
Yeah. Well, and is being selfish? I mean, we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, not at all.
I just feel like if you're a woman, like everything you do is scrutinized to some extent like that. Like, we're the ones being called selfish. We're the ones being called bossy. We're the ones being called hyper-independent.
Of course.
Yeah, we're the one that's a hoe. And I'm just like,
Say, what do you say? You keep whispering that in there. It's like kind of a trinkle. Say
Well, because
that.
I felt like it was obvious, but you know.
For some.
So in the world of this conversation, if we're teaching people, or if people are watching or listening, and they're like, man, you know, how do we do this, right? This is kind of an example of how we engage. And I appreciate y'all allowing me to be in the room and be curious, because, you know, I've always heard like men shouldn't be in a room when women talk. And
They should, though.
Yeah.
I think we have. I feel like there are a lot of those types of things that are permeated in society and culturally that need to be broken. And I think even the question of why don't we talk about sex to our children as they're growing up and exploring their body parts and using correct terminology, that can be the root of a lot of this. You know, like we wouldn't be even having the need to have this conversation.
So when's a proper age to talk to your kid about sex? What do you think?
So I feel like that depends on maturity level and where the kid is. Like my son, my oldest is 5, he'll be 6, and he's definitely not in any way ready to have a conversation about intercourse. But he is exploring his penis, and we call it that. Like, that's the name of the part. They have asked mommy, why don't girls have a penis? So we have those conversations. God didn't give me one. Yeah. Well, why? He didn't.
It's his choice.
And boys have this and girls have that. And that's it. And I think even creating or having or allowing space for those conversations creates an environment where as he gets older, my hope is that as he continues to explore pleasure because he wants to touch it, you can touch it. Why do you touch it? Because it feels good. Great. Do it in your room.
Yeah.
In the privacy of your own room. Like, that is totally fine. It's yours. I don't want to see
Go away.
it. I'm trying to watch TV.
You do that on your own time, like I do that on my own time.
We're going to control the exhibitionism early.
That part. Thank you.
I think, as a sex educator, there are ways to start the conversations as early as 5 or even pre-K, but it has to be age appropriate. So you don't teach algebra to a 5-year-old. You don't teach intercourse to a 5-year-old. That's an advanced topic. But you can start with, what does consent look like? And you can do that with kids early.
Yes.
Like, good touching and bad touching. Like, that's so important. Like,
And
who's allowed to see this part of your body?
Right.
Who's allowed to touch it? Like,
or even
that's
hugs
so
and intimacy. You can start that young, but it has to be age appropriate. So Ashley is right. It's like the maturity level grows and the topics grow, but you can start really early.
So really the embodiment.
Sex is huge.
It is. There's so much to talk about in it. And
so it's not just about intercourse.
No. But that is where I think a lot of people's head goes. Like, even here in Louisville, in Kentucky, we've been trying to pass a comprehensive sex education plan for JCPS schools. But people immediately go, I don't want my 5-year-old learning about sex. And it's like, no one's going to teach your 5-year-old about sex. But we might teach your 5-year-old about,
what are your parts?
Intimacy and boundaries and communication, because that's also things that go into, and that conversation builds, just like you learn to add and you build on it. And eventually you can do algebra.
Algebra.
Maybe. I struggled a little bit, but eventually you can do a little bit of algebra.
Riece, you need to record that. That was a whole
It was beautiful. Y'all make sure y'all cut that.
Was that not recorded?
It was not.
We're just saying that was fucking beautiful.
So that's the trailer right there.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I also love the body parts part, because I'm struggling with that now as a 30-year-old woman. Like, I'm just learning more about my period. And I'm just like, fuck. Like, I could have maneuvered life in so many different ways as far as like my mental health goes and such, as far as just my knowledge on how to take care of my body through those times. And it's just a natural part of me. So yeah, with body parts also, I know there are some books out there that do have depictions of what this looks like and that looks like. And we have people in legislation who's just like, it's porn. They're trying to put porn in the schools. And it's just kind of like, this mindset is ridiculous on how much fear-mongering happens. And with that, it's keeping so much knowledge and education from kids.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm saying kids because, that's where we start. And then from there, we crazy. But like,
it handicaps them early.
Exactly. So yeah, sex is just that big ass realm.
I mean, it's super important. I mean, I have a thing about touching people or people touching me. So And then I we grew up in.
You don't like to be touched.
Not unless I know you. Like you have
I'd
to,
be
like,
hugging you all the time.
I love you, so it works. But like people who don't know me, like that's why I rarely shake hands, right? Because it's a vibe. But I also been around a lot of folks who have been molested or raped or sexually assaulted at one level or another, family members, friends. And I remember when Suge, so we call our daughter Suge, when she was little, somebody wanted to give her a hug and she was like, no. But it was before 5, right? And so at that moment, I realized, she gets to choose.
Yeah.
It's her choice.
I love that.
Yeah.
We don't want to hug nobody if we don't want to.
Yeah.
Same with the kids.
Yeah.
Did you ever have those family members who were like, oh, that's your uncle, like, go on and that's your uncle, give him a hug.
Yeah.
That's things that we can talk about with kids.
Absolutely.
Like, you have the consent whether somebody touches your body.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, all the time.
It
So
doesn't make you a wrong person, a not nice person.
Or a bad person.
Yeah.
Like, autonomy, teaching some autonomy.
yeah, so having those conversations in the beginning are a beautiful thing. So as we get through and we venture through episode 1, I love this conversation, and I hope everybody who's watching and listening, right? Because we're gonna take deep dives into this. So it's about 10 or 12 episodes that we're gonna introduce at a good roundabout of what we've talked about today. Any thoughts, takeaways before we go into say bye?
You first, Doctor.
You go ahead. You
excited about yours, so I want to hear what it is.
I'm putting my
I
feet
was
in
gonna ask
everything.
my question. I was gonna ask my question.
What's your question?
How was sex introduced to everyone? Like, how can you, the first time that you remember sex being introduced to you, like, oh, this is sex, and not like physically y'all are having sex. It ain't gotta be like that, but when was sex first introduced to y'all, if y'all can even remember that? Because I've been trying to think this whole time too. Like, what the fuck? It wasn't when my mom put the condom over her arm. So
Her arm?
she was trying to tell me about condoms, and she put one over. She was trying to. People would try to say like, "Oh, condoms will
it's
break
too
so
small.
easily," and do all this shit. Yeah, too small. So she put one over her arm to prove and show, and then she was like, "Now, if you see one this big, run." Oh, Mom!
I've done that before.
I am in middle school.
No, put it over our arm. But yes, none.
So yeah, that was just my question to you all.
Got you. Who wants to take it?
I don't mind to. I mean, mine wasn't super exciting. It was on the school bus.
That's how that
So
story starts.
I was sharing with you, maybe Riece, that I was the youngest, to do. So I was the last to do everything. So I was 13 going into high school, and we're a young 13-year-old on this bus, and people were talking about sex and condoms, and I was like, what are they talking about? And of course, it's you don't want to be the one that's
So what are y'all talking about?
hey girl, what is that?
Yeah.
And we didn't have Google at that point either. So I went home and was like, Mom, what is a condom? And she, the look on her face was like, oh, we don't talk about that. And, it was awful.
What are they teaching you in that school?
I was like, so on the bus, they were talking about these things called condoms. What are they? And she was like, you don't need to know about it. And I was like,
Clearly, if they're passing around on the school bus, I need to know about it.
and
Brought one home to her.
What is this? Slam it on the table.
What is this?
What is this?
How does one use
How are
this?
you keeping this from me?
So I literally made the decision at that point. I was like, so my mom will learn that I had sex when I get pregnant.
Oh wow. Okay.
Period.
Basically.
That was we didn't talk about it.
Oh,
So
heartbreak.
I learned from friends and peer.
In the school bus.
Yeah, the
You learn
school,
a lot on that
school
school
bus.
bus.
You learn a lot on
I
the
like
bus.
that school bus is interesting. I had my first kiss on the school bus
Oh, I love that.
in elementary school
Oh, I still love it.
with a woman.
Now you got my attention.
I know, right? I knew you would like that. Yeah. I would say probably that it definitely wasn't from my parents. So I would say other peers. I can't pinpoint the exact first time, but I remember those being in the back of the bus and kissing, and that's your beginnings, right? I remember being at a sleepover and we filled condoms up with water and threw them out the window at a car. So it's not sex per se, but it's right in that.
related.
It's related. It's those first steps, I think. But yeah.
I love that, the condoms and the balloons.
Yeah, I was like, water balloons, you know, like as
I'm
a
a delinquent
kid.
at heart.
I do think at that same sleepover, oh my God, my mom doesn't know this. It was her friends.
about to know now.
Right, she about to know now.
Yeah,
But we
sorry.
did actually watch a porn, but we were just laughing at it. Like we just thought it was funny because we're kids and we don't know what they're doing. It didn't turn us on or anything at all. It was just like, that's so funny, look at what they're doing. And then you look back now and you're like, we probably shouldn't have been doing any of that. But here we are.
You know, we got to start somewhere.
Somewhere, right? Right.
What about you?
Man, it's a long journey. So
You gotta think back long and hard. Let's give you a few minutes.
so part of
Did you have sex when Jesus was around?
no, I lost my virginity late in life, but I was introduced to sex probably at the age of 6, 7. So I won't say who it was because then people know who he is. But so I used to stick my tongue out at people all the time when I was a kid, and so
'Cause you was
the
just
grown
that
men
kid.
used to be
Yeah.
like, you know, one day you're gonna make a woman happy, and so that made me curious. Like, what do you do with
How
your tongue
old
to
were
a
you?
woman? I was like 6.
Dudes just talk to each other like. I
Yeah.
wish
So
we
these
was
were
on this
grown
shit.
men though. So these were
See how
adults.
no one would ever say that to a young girl.
Ever.
No one would ever
Well,
say
they
that.
shouldn't have been saying it to me. It was inappropriate. But so that leads down, because I'm an inquisitive person. But then later on, probably about a year or two later, I find a Kama Sutra book. And so I read the whole book and I learn about body parts and shapes and positions. I begin to explore pleasure both in that space. And then it just keeps going through the journey. So, but I have this interesting, I don't know, I guess it's kind of a dichotomy, right? So I'm learning, but then I'm surrounded by what I would consider inappropriate sex education from adults, both men and women, on this journey. So I don't learn that sexual assault is not just rape, right? It is also psychological. It is also taking children and introducing them to things that they're not ready for.
Right.
And so, yeah, so it's a long journey. So before we wrap up.
I wasn't thinking on mine. But I do remember LimeWire. Y'all remember LimeWire?
I remember LimeWire.
So let's talk to Ashley. real quick.
Educate me.
Let's go.
I'm
So
unaware.
LimeWire used to be this like big ass downloading platform.
File sharing.
Yes, there we go. People would just upload all types of shit on there, and you could definitely catch a virus. I think that's how I got caught, because there was viruses on the computer.
You could.
Computer viruses.
Yeah,
Computer viruses. Yeah. Like we starting early, right?
Oh yeah, shift over. A computer virus.
Computer virus.
Word.
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you.
That's where I
tracking.
downloaded a bunch of porn and saw shit like parodies.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. It was weird. It was weird. I think maybe I started in like, not chat rooms, but like being talked to.
I remember chat
in those.
rooms.
Yeah.
There were chat rooms like that.
Yeah. So I don't know. It might have been around there where shit started to actually escalate. Prior to that, I don't know. It could have been like the kids at school or some shit. Someone was trying to say they wanted to have sex with me, but I didn't know they were, and they brought a condom, and I didn't know what that was. And they kept saying shit like, yeah, push in, push out, or some shit. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what that means.
What is that?
It was years later when I was like, oh, dumbass, you mean pull out. Stupid. He didn't know what he was talking about either. So yeah, my
Thus
intros
those
are
that we
definitely
need to talk
scattered.
about.
Yeah.
Probably started with mom and the CD computer game on how you can get pregnant. I'm telling y'all, it was a lot of stuff rooted in do not get pregnant. So I think that might have been actually my introduction to sex, playing like those computer games that just showed you through like the sperm and the sperm and the egg journey type situation or something. So, I mean, it was educational. Thanks, Mom. You just got me scared, woman. Like,
That computer game has better sex education than I had in school.
I swear I learned a lot. I learned a
missed the
lot.
game.
I missed the game too.
I didn't have that game,
old.
but
too old? Is that
that
what it
game
is? Okay.
sounds like it has more education than I got when I was in high
You
school.
said you're too old? This was back when CDs was a thing.
I mean, but I guess we were past that point.
past
it. Yeah,
we had
Sex
sex ed in school.
We did not.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they gave y'all games. We had real conversations.
Like real
I was able to go
Yeah,
to class and
definitely.
be like, but don't it do like this? Or, but what about this? And Amira, hush.
Yeah.
I was a virgin because of sex ed. Like, no lie. As soon as I saw herpes, gonorrhea for herpes, all the whole line of them, like, they showed us what it looked like on the
did not
what it
put
looked like on the
them all
vagina.
together.
I ran. I was like, oh, hell no, never touching that. And I remember my sex ed teacher was like, you should look first. So the first time I had sex, I went and looked. Like, you know, we doing it with the
lift
lights on.
lift a labia real
I want to
quick.
see the whole, like, what's your vagina look like?
Check under the hood.
Yeah, absolutely, because, you know, I wanted no parts of that.
Yeah, which further reinforces why we're here.
I hate the fear-mongering sex ed. Like, you do have to have those conversations, but I hate that it scares so many people away.
Yeah. I wish it scared them to educate themselves more, but really just, I'm gonna just chill over here.
Well,
It's kind of because they don't bring in both parts. Like we started with this whole conversation talking about pleasure, and no one talks about pleasure in sex ed. So you only are talking about the yin and not the yang. Like
Right.
you're showing me all the negative things, but you're not showing me any of the positive things.
But it's like what
That would
you're
make it
not
different.
supposed to know.
Yeah. And why are we hiding the good part?
Well, as we wrap this up, we're gonna on our next episode, y'all have to come back and watch with us. I hope you've enjoyed us today. There's gonna be a lot of this. I hope you learned something. Hopefully you can go home and ask your mom and your dad, like, how did we not get it right? Or did we get it right? And ask yourself,
tell
are we exploring?
us.
Or tell us.
If your parents got it right, drop it. Do we have
more of those
We'll
stories.
have a YouTube account. We will be on Facebook, Instagram. We will also be on Apple, Spotify, Google, all the places where you can get a podcast, and pretty much all the places that you can watch. And it will be also in the description of every episode that we drop. So if you want to do the other things like subscribe and ring bells, you can do all that too, and share it. But
Bitch,
on
we
that
taking
note,
over.
yes, there it is, right? So our next episode, when we get
Educating
into
the
it,
masses.
educating the masses, we're gonna talk about what? Sex, intimacy,
safety,
safety, consent, and how to enjoy it. Yeah. So we get to take a deep dive into pleasure.
I love it.
See, if she loves it, I want it.
She's like,
Show
ready.
right on, baby girl.
I love that. It's gonna be everybody's world by the time we're done.
Everybody's world. All right, cool. Well, look, my good people, we appreciate y'all hanging out. I gotta make this. This is for our sponsors because they said if we didn't say it, they was gonna cut our camera cords.
Turn the mics off.
Turn the mics off. They was gonna cut the mic off. So this program is supported by the Health Equity Innovation Hub of the University of Louisville. And so the views expressed are not necessarily those and of the funders. They are ours. And so we enjoy you being with us, and we will see you next time on Let's Talk Sex, Common Conversation.
Bye-bye.
Peace, love, and